Peace and love, everybody. I'm Royce Fletcher Thomason, back for another Sunday Hope and Healing session. Here to offer encouragement, hope, healing of physical and non-physical issues, and we're glad to do that each and every Sunday at 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. And so today our focus is actually on addressing physical pain. So if anybody is experiencing any physical pain, as odd as it may seem, we can address it right during the broadcast. So if you have physical pain or know somebody who is experiencing physical pain, uh, let us know, or send, if you know somebody, send the link to them and invite them to come. We can address your physical pain right on the spot. We've done that before. But that isn't all that we're addressing today. We're also dealing with matters related to anger, dealing with inflammation, and cancer. So all of these, and I know that's kind of a lot, but these are all things that we're going to be looking at exploring today. Again, if you personally are dealing with any of these things, physical pain, matters related to anger, dealing with some anger, uh, if you have inflammation in your body, a lot of times you have stuff going on in your body, and the result is the result of inflammation, although you might not necessarily realize that. Anything that actually ends with an itis, arthritis, laryngitis, hepatitis, any of the things that end with an itis is actually inflammation. So if you're suffering from any of those itises, it means that your body has inflammation going on inside of it that needs to be addressed, and also cancer. And if you are dealing with it, or anybody you know is dealing with it, or if you want to hopefully not have to deal with it, um, this is this is the key time. So please make yourself available to this, or if you know anybody again who's dealing with this, please make sure that they know, so that they can get the benefits from it. All right. So it's interesting kind of putting all of these different four things together and addressing these different four things because believe it or not, there can certainly be a significant correlation between all four of these things. It doesn't mean that if you have one or two of these that you necessarily have all of the others, but very well could. All right. And so let me say that if you have physical pain in your body, and I know this is going to be a significant statement that I'm about to make. But if you have physical pain in your body that you're experiencing in your body, no matter what the cause is, you could have stubbed your toe, you could have been in a car accident, you could have, um, you could have suffered some, athletic injury or something. You could have sprained your ankle. Any physical pain that you have in your body, it isn't just a physical pain. If you're experiencing in your body, if you're experiencing physical pain in your body, it's pointing to a pain that is non-physical. There may be an emotional pain and a lot of times people are in denial about it, quite frankly. But there could be a pain that you're suffering from, a pain that you're dealing with that might not even register within you consciously. It might be something that you've suppressed, that you've pushed down very deeply, and then something ends up happening, and then you end up experiencing physical pain. Greetings, Jennifer. Good to have you in the space today. Didn't know that you were here, but glad that you made yourself known. And so a lot of times there are things that are going on inside of us that are just way underneath our radar. A lot of times, even for those of us who consider ourselves to be in tune with ourselves, a lot of times there are things that we have sometimes even subconsciously repressed and suppressed because maybe it was just too painful to deal with. And these could be things that could have been in childhood, things that could have happened a long, long time ago that we kind of did, we kind of have these defense mechanisms to protect ourselves. And so what ends up happening is life unfolds in such a way, I believe, that is really coming from a compassionate place. I really do believe that it's come from a compassionate place, that things have been set up to unfold in a way that may bring up other pains or other what might appear to be sources of pain at other points in life. And so a person, I use an example, a person could have been in a car accident that they didn't cause. They could have been rear ended. They could have been standing still at a red light, like I was once before when somebody came off the freeway and crashed into me. Uh, a person could be sitting at a red light doing something. They could be not actively engaged in doing anything that they would think would be where they would have any kind of bearing in what it is that ends up bringing this challenge to their doorstep. Okay, I appreciate you sharing what you shared, Jennifer, about week after week these topics speaking to you. And so I really do believe, I am convinced of it, that everything that happens in our lives, though it's not necessarily things that we would consciously choose, though it's not things, if we had an opportunity to write the script, to consciously write the script, these are certainly things that we would not have purposely included in the writing of our story. If we had a chance to stand in line and cast our vote, there are certain things that we wouldn't have even put on the ballot consciously, right? But sometimes life unfolds in such a way as to where these different things happen, but they're actually happening to actually deliver us, give us awareness, help us to deal with some things that were previously unresolved from the past that we don't even sometimes recognize. And that includes whatever the cause of physical pain could be. And listen, folks, I'm not just pulling some stuff out of my back pocket. I'm not just telling you some theoretical stuff. I have been experientially seeing this happen for well over 20 years now. And time after time, I've been blessed to work with people, and sometimes myself, definitely myself as well, where something is operating on the surface, but the thing that's operating on the surface, it's like an iceberg. You only see the tip of it, but the great majority of it is underneath the surface. You can't see it. The real weight of what's going on is beneath the surface. A tree, you see what's above the ground, but you don't see the intricate root system that's underneath the earth, that's beneath the surface. And so what happens is that we end up experiencing the fruit of our lives in whatever way the fruit of our lives might play out. And sometimes we get upset with the fruit that we see because we don't really understand what the root cause of that issue is. And we can't really get rid of the fruit in our life. And we end up seeing repeated experiences, having repeated experiences of it because we don't understand the root and don't address it from the root. We pacify ourselves. We take painkillers. We do things to numb ourselves. We distract ourselves from what it is that's really going on the inside. Don't deal with the root. And as long as the root is there, whatever it is that we're not liking is going to continue to grow and going to continue to bear the fruit that may be undesirable in our lives, right? And that includes physical pain. Even if the physical pain on the surface level resulted from a car accident, resulted from a physical injury, resulted from somebody, um, you know, physically engaging you in a way that ends up resulting in pain, or an accident where you might be walking and trip and fall, or you might be in the process of uh, you know going through whatever it is that you're doing in your daily life. You could be preparing some food to eat and cut your finger. All right. You can be walking on the beach and cut the bottom of your foot on a sharp piece of a seashell, right? Any of these things can happen. And the reality is that there's always something beneath the surface that's going on, though you really might not always know what that is. One of the gifts of my life, a challenge too, but one of the gifts of my life is that I've continually challenged to look beneath the surface, to delve beneath the surface and endeavor to address the root. It's a privilege that I've been able to exercise in terms of supporting others, a responsibility too, in terms of addressing others, but also in terms of addressing me, right? Because in reality, there are no victims in this world. There are no victims. That doesn't mean we don't have victim stories that we tell ourselves, because sometimes we do. It doesn't mean that we don't have challenges um, that we don't know how to make sense of, because sometimes we do. But I believe in an simultaneously infinitely powerful, but also infinitely loving God, who is in every moment seeking to bless us. And sometimes we're receptive to that, and sometimes we're not. Sometimes the blessing comes in a form that's agreeable to us. And sometimes the blessing comes in the form of something that we don't think that we want. Sometimes we think we want stuff that ends up being something that ends up destroying us. Sometimes we don't think we want something that ends up being what makes all the difference in our life for our betterment. Right? All right. I feel like I can go down a whole rabbit hole with that. But I do want to ask if anybody present is dealing with any physical pain. If so, we'll address the physical pain. Let us know. We'll address it on the spot. If you have physical pain coming in, you will feel better by the time this Sunday Hope and Healing session comes to an end today. All right, so I'm putting that out there. If you have some physical pain that you're dealing with, let it be known. Keep in mind that a closed mouth does not get fed. There's no shame in it. It doesn't require you to believe that it can work or for you to understand how it's possible. It doesn't require that. It can still happen, right? And so that's as far as that physical pain is concerned. Also, let's address anger, inflammation, cancer. Whew. It's a lot to address, right? It's a lot to address. Let's actually address the inflammation first. As I mentioned earlier, there is a lot of inflammation that manifests as different forms of dis-ease within our body temple, right? I gave a few examples: laryngitis, arthritis, sinusitis, right? Anything that has an itis on it is an inflammation. Now, those aren't the only forms of inflammation. Inflammation can show up in other ways too. A lot of times, um, eating a lot of processed foods can end up manifesting as inflammation in the body, right? A fever. All of these things are kind of fiery type inflammation. The root of that is inflamed. You take it, break it down further, it deals with fire. Okay. And the reality is that there are some things that are burning us on the inside. There are some things where we might feel a deep and a profound sense of anger. Maybe it's anger regarding the injustices that you might see in the world. Maybe it's anger regarding how somebody treated you and you didn't feel like you deserve that. Maybe it's anger about the person in traffic who cut you off on the road. Maybe it's anger towards somebody who is just clueless and just doesn't get it. And maybe it's anger towards yourself for putting yourself in situations that you did. Maybe it's anger toward yourself for decisions that you made that impacted other people. Maybe someone specifically that you care about, right? Maybe it's anger at yourself because you feel like you should know better and you still made these missteps along the path of the journey of your life that ended up having a negative impact on you, maybe also a negative impact upon others, right? And so in the midst of all of this, this is part of the soup of life. This is part of the soup of life. And as we're going through the process of navigating this journey that we call life as a human being on this planet that we call Earth, we sometimes have areas where we misstep. We sometimes have areas where we make mistakes. We sometimes have areas where we mess up. We sometimes have areas where we feel like it's okay to be irresponsible. That's just the truth. And just blame somebody else. And sometimes it's easier, and I'm gonna use this strong language. Sometimes it's easier just to be pissed off at the other person. It's easier to be pissed off at the other person or blame the other person because of what we don't want to address within ourselves. The reality of the matter is that I really do believe that people are doing the best that they can, the best that they know in that moment. And even though in another moment you might know better, or in another moment another person might know better, perhaps in that moment, that's the best they know to do. And the reality is, people are doing the best that they know as a function of the culmination of their life experiences. And some of those life experiences have been affirming, have been feeding and nourishing you and others in a way that's been beneficial. And some of those life experiences, let's just call a spade a spade. Some of those life experiences have been damaging. Some of those life experiences have resulted in us kind of getting some things twisted. I believe in life. I believe in life. We frequently operate off of a faulty premise. And the faulty premise upon which we frequently operate in life is that somehow God doesn't have our back. Somehow we're alone in this world. Somehow we're forgotten about. Somehow we're not loved. Somehow something's wrong. Something's wrong. And the reality is that there are things that we see that we don't quite understand in this, what I refer to as third dimensional matrix of separation and limitation, i.e., this matrix of illusion where things seem a way, but they're not as they seem. Sometimes things happen in our lives that totally throw us for a loop. Things that we didn't see coming, that knock us off our square. And sometimes even result in us feeling devastated, right? And then these things happen and we end up somehow not feeling safe. We end up experiencing pain, or we end up having an experience of being or feeling neglected somehow, or we have needs that we don't feel were met somehow. Maybe we were relying on somebody to fulfill a certain need and they didn't. Maybe it was somebody that had a responsibility that they didn't live up to, and we're left holding the bag. We're left unfulfilled. The reality is that we all need others. We all do. We're hardwired for it. Our brains are hardwired for it. And sometimes people meet a need, and sometimes they don't meet the need. And sometimes when we have the need that goes unmet, sometimes there's anger that ends up developing as a function of that. There's resentment that's held as a function of that. And then we end up telling ourselves story. We find coping mechanisms to try to deal with the pain, try to deal with the disappointment, to try to deal with things not unfolding in the way that we wanted or even needed them to. And then we make up a story to protect ourselves, like, I didn't need them anyway, or I don't need this, or I don't need that. And sometimes in the process of that, we allow our heart to become hardened. We end up getting in denial that it wasn't that we didn't need this, it was that the need went unmet. And it was too painful to deal with the idea of having needs that could go unmet, because that leaves us in a state of feeling vulnerable. Feeling vulnerable means that we don't have a sense of control, and humans tend to prefer to have a sense of control. A reality is, hey, listen, I've had a couple experiences with hurricanes. One time I was actually in a hurricane in 1995, October of 1995, Hurricane Opal. And I actually felt concerned that my wall was going to cave in. And that was a scary feeling. And I realized I'm not in control of anything. Another time, in years later, 22 years later, in 2017, I evacuated a hurricane where it ended up being in a position where I pretty much had to release everything that I previously owned. And there's sometimes these different life experiences that happen that can remind us, if we're paying attention, that we're not really in control of anything. My mind goes back to a song that was sung by the late Sean Pace Rhodes, where she said, if I were in control of my life, if I were in control of my life, I think I would have worked things out much differently. There would be no hurt, no pain, no disappointment. Of these things, my life would be scot-free. But that just goes to show how little I know about leading, about controlling my life, for all of these things have worked together just to make the best of me. And I want to tell you, I know that you've been through some stuff in your life. I know you've had some challenges in your life. I know that there have been times where you wept bitterly in pain. And it doesn't make you weak that you did. It doesn't make you inadequate that you did. Jesus the Christ did it. Easter Sunday was last Sunday, which means that last Friday was Good Friday. Right? And he in a situation, was in a straight state of such agony and distress that he was sweating blood, right? It is part of the human experience to have these things that don't necessarily feel so pleasant. And we've got to kind of find our way of navigating ourselves through it. Sometimes we'd like to be in control of things, but we are not able to be in control because we think if we're in control, we can protect ourselves, keep ourselves from anything bad happening to us. And the reality is that is a complete untruth. There have been times where we've tried to take control of a situation and we only made them worse. I certainly did. I certainly have on numerous occasions. Sometimes we do something, we make a mistake, and we try to, we keep intensifying the mistake that we've made and try to do things to try to control an outcome, and it only makes things worse. Sometimes people have gotten caught in a lie, and then they keep telling more lies to cover the previous lie. And they just keep snowballing and escalating. People trying to control something happening a certain way. Courts are full of people doing this, right? Sometimes it's in those moments where we have to recognize I'm not actually in control of anything, and that's okay. Sometimes when we get to a point where we can turn over the reins to God, trusting in something that you can't see, that you want to believe is real, but you can't see. And sometimes we can't see the way that things are going to work out. Sometimes when a relationship is broken, you don't know how you're going to go on. Sometimes when you lose your job, you don't know how you're going to provide for yourself, for your family. Sometimes when other people make decisions that impact you, maybe people in government, maybe people in your household, make decisions that impact you, you don't know how you're going to make it through. And yes, that may in some ways leave you vulnerable. The reality is that as human beings, there is a certain vulnerability. But here's the thing. If we can trust and have faith that we're being guided, that we're being protected, that we're being taken care of in the midst of our vulnerability, that's where our real true security really comes. There's a scripture that says there's a way that seems right to a person, but in the end, it ends up leading to their own destruction. We're operating with about 10% of our brain capacity. It's said that Albert Einstein, brilliant man, also a deeply spiritual man, that he was operating with about 17% of his brain capacity. If you've ever been in school and taken an exam and you got a 17% on your exam, what would the grade be? Would you have been deemed to have sufficiently mastered the material enough to receive a passing grade? Absolutely not. Nowhere even close to passing, right? Nowhere even close to passing. We're operating with a very, very, very small percentage of the hardware that God has placed within us. And we're having thought processes that are based on a matrix of illusion that is tied to negative, some positive, but also a bunch of negative experiences that we've had, and lack based thinking and illusions of all sorts of things that have been passed down from one generation to the next that are ultimately rooted in false evidence appearing real, right? Rooted in a sense of lack, rooted in a sense of limitation, rooted in negativity that we direct inwardly and that we direct outwardly. All right. And in the midst of that, there's a greater truth that is operating beyond, that falls into that 90% of what's possible. How often are we trying to do things in our own strength? Somebody does something that we don't like, and so we've got to give them a piece of our mind. We've got to read them the riot act. We've got to be the person who paid them back, who makes them pay for the pain that they caused us, right? Hmm. It's insidious, people. And so we have this anger that's operating on the inside. And I want to say to you, if you're dealing with any type of inflammation of any sort, if you have a fever, if you have any of those itises, let me suggest to you that there's some anger issues that you need to deal with. You may not even know it. You may not even be consciously aware of it. But there's some anger issues that are going on that need to be addressed and need to be addressed in a healthy way. I'll tell you some other fiery emotions. Emotions in general are watery. They're like water. They're intended to flow. Just like the nature of water is to flow. Water that is flowing is healthy. It's life-giving. It's life-affirming. Water that is stagnant becomes toxic. Emotions, you break it down as energy in motion. Emotions are supposed to be something that flows through us, but frequently they get stuck somewhere in us. And it ends up creating blockages, inflammation, congestion. There isn't a free flow of the energy in our bodies. It causes things to happen where things get backed up in our bodies, right? And when that happens, when we're not in a flow, we're not able to exist physically in a state of homeostasis. Now, anger is a fiery emotion, though emotions in general are designed to flow through us. Anger, however, is a fiery emotion. Resentment is a fiery emotion. You look at the nature of fire is to consume. Resentment can consume us. We're talking also about cancer, right? The term cancer as a disease is a relatively recent naming. What it used to be called is consumption. The disease cancer used to be labeled consumption, because what's happening in cancer is that your body is consuming itself from the inside out. What's happening with cancer is that although you have a master cell in the pineal gland in the middle of your brain that gives instructions to all of the other billions and trillions of cells in your body as to what to do, all designed to be contributing to the greater good of your body as a whole. What it is with a cancer cell is that a cancer cell, rooted in its fear-based perspective, decides, you know what? I'd rather operate on a different frequency. I'm not interested in what this greater plan, what this greater scheme is. I want to go a different route. I'm going to buck I'm going to buck the plan that's being passed down to me. I'm going to create a force field around myself that I become no longer receptive to what this divine message is, that is intended to support the greater good of the whole. I want to do my own thing, independent of how these other cells are operating or what they're trying to do. As a matter of fact, not only that, I'm going to recruit other cells to join me, and we can all go rogue together and take over this whole thing, right? And that's literally what cancer is. And what happens is it's a parasite. It feeds upon its host. Parasite cannot live without a host. It feeds upon the host until either it is wiped out or until it kills its host. And then, ultimately it's not that bright, because whereas it needs the host to live, it focuses on doing its own thing, even to the point of killing its host, which ultimately results in its own suicide. Okay. How often do we engage in acts of self-sabotage? How often do we do things that cut us off from our power source? How often do we end up harboring things inside of us that end up consuming us? There's a very strong correlation between resentment and cancer. And if you can overcome your resentment issues, you can likely overcome your cancer. And resentment really is a form of anger. It's an anger that we direct inwards, right? Sometimes because we gave ourselves up for somebody else, and then we feel resentment about that. We feel a sense of resentment about that. And that ends up providing fertile soil wherein the weed of cancer can grow, right? And we need to uproot that and replace it with something else that's going to let all of the things blossom in our lives that we want to see flourish, that we can feed on and be nourished by and continue to grow and live and prosper in life, right? And so, again, I want to put it out there. If anybody here is dealing with any physical pain, if anybody here is dealing with any inflammation, again, anything that ends with an itis is an inflammation. If anybody here is dealing with cancer, right, let us know. We'll address it right during the broadcast. We're very happy to support you in this journey, right? And so all four of these things can be tied together: pain, anger, inflammation, and cancer, right? All four of these things can be tied together. And if you have the C, the cancer previously referred to as consumption, and I really think that was a better name for it, quite honestly. I have to do some research on why the name of the disease was changed from consumption to cancer. Okay. Probably not difficult to do as I think about it. Um, in reality, the way that we were designed, the way our physical bodies, our body temples were designed, were for our bodies to heal themselves. Right? If you get a cut, a scrape, the body will heal itself. If a bone breaks, now the bone may be fractured, it may be placed out of alignment in the process of the break and may need to be reset so that when it grows back in alignment. But if once it's reset, That's why people wear a cast, so that they don't misset it. So it stays locked in, and it's designed to fuse back together, right? In fact, not only is it designed to fuse back together, it'll fuse back harder in that spot than it was before. Our bodies, in the infinitely wisdom mind of God, God designed our bodies in such a way to self-regenerate. However, we lose track. We've lost track in a lot of ways. And instead of operating in a way that puts us in a position for the healing to happen, we sometimes, in fact, frequently, put ourselves in a position to continue feeding the problem, right? Put ourselves in a position to continue feeding the problem. And so, again, anybody who wants to provide some feedback, love to hear from you. Whether you agree or disagree, by the way, love to hear from you. And in the meantime, we're going to go ahead and do some healing. This is going to be a very, very general healing. But nonetheless, it's open for everybody who's open and receptive to it. And so what I'm really going to do is address the root cause of unresolved fiery emotions, right? That could be anger, it could be resentment, it could be a sense of vengefulness, it could be hostility, okay? It could be any of those things, all right? And sometimes it manifests as a lot of other different ways, but we're gonna kind of address that in general. That will address some other things as well. All right. So God, I know you to be the ultimate healer. You're the source of all real true healing. And I offer myself as a vessel of that healing, thankful and grateful for the privilege of the opportunity. And through the union that we share, and as a function of your pure love, I demonstrate you as a healer on the behalf of anyone who raises their hand and wants to include themselves in this. Neutralizing the root cause of all unresolved fiery emotions locked within the cracks and crevices of our minds, our beingness, and any place that may show up within the body temple. From the point of the root cause, in every single cell of the body, every strand of DNA, every morsel of our existence, transmuting it into and replacing it with a deep and abiding peace, release, and surrender to your grace, your protection, and your love. And I bear witness to the wholeness of each person who is here receptive to this healing. On this date and in this time and space called now, I thank you, God, for this healing as a function of your divine love. And I affirm it is done. It is done. It is done. All right. Okay, so let's get into this right now. All right, so the very first thing that I want to do is address anger towards your parents for bringing you into this hellhole that you call Earth, right? It's not something we frequently think about on a conscious level. But every single person who's tuned in right now, every single person who's watching this playback has experienced pain, heartache, and unpleasantness on this planet at some point in time. And every single one of you know that you wouldn't be here if it had not been for your parents. So let's address unacknowledged anger and hostility towards your parents for causing you to be born into this place that would inevitably result in you feeling and experiencing pain. And let's transmute that anger into gratitude. But really, to be able to feel the gratitude, it requires a shift in perspective. It requires a shift in perspective in terms of how you see the world. And really, even that points to another anger, which is anger towards God. Anger towards God for sending you here. I have sometimes memories of before I was born and reluctantly coming to this planet. That's not an experience that maybe everybody has. Some do, but certainly not everybody consciously. But yet, essentially, every human being has within them on some level an anger towards God that you frequently don't even allow yourself to permission to have or to experience or to acknowledge. Doesn't mean it's not there though. All right, so let's offer forgiveness, a deep sense of forgiveness to your parents, to God, and to yourself. Okay. And now, in terms of actually being able to see, I think of the words from The Lion King, circle of life. From the day we arrived on this planet and blinking stepped into the sun, there is more to see than could ever be seen, more to do than could ever be done. There's far too much to take in here, more to find than can ever be found. But the sun rolling high through the sapphire sky, great and small on this endless round, is the circle of life. And I think of the other song, What a Wonderful World, sung by old Satchmo, Louis Armstrong. There is experiences of pain and hurt that happen here, but there are also experiences of profound joy, profound happiness. I've long said that my favorite season of the year is the spring. And the reason that my favorite season of the year is the spring is because I grew up in Michigan where I experienced long, harsh winters. And it was the contrast of having experienced the winter that helped me to be able to develop my deep and profound appreciation for the spring. Even though I was born on the first day of fall, my favorite season of the year is the spring because it follows the long, cold winter. The contrast gives me appreciation. If all that you ever know is heaven, how can you know that it's heaven? How can you really be able to appreciate what heaven feels like? If all you've ever known is joy, how can you truly value the blessing of joy if you don't have anything to compare it to? If you've never had a heartbreak, how can you fully appreciate? How can you fully appreciate what it is to have a healed heart? Hmm. And some of this is our areas where it could help for us to have a little bit of a paradigm shift. So I want to support us in being able to shift the paradigm into feeling safe even in our vulnerability. Mm. Now, granted, everybody does not deserve your vulnerability. Doesn't mean you need to be vulnerable with everybody, but you need to be vulnerable with somebody. To be able to be vulnerable with somebody, some other human in this earth, and minimally be completely vulnerable with the source of your existence. All right. And so, want to let's look at transmuting trust in your own strength to trust in the source of all strength. Yeah, there's room for a lot of growth there. All right. And trusting the source of all strength greater than you trust your own strength. Whoo! Yeah, let's address that. Okay, let's address that. And so let's look at feeling a security in your defenselessness. Let's address setting healthy boundaries in terms of how you will behave and how you will respond. Let's address receptivity to greater insight that gives a true sense of safety and security in terms of the very foundation and nature of your existence and the divine plan for your life, bigger than what you have ever perceived it to be, more beautiful than what you've ever perceived it to be. Thank you, God. All righty. Let's look at in general, let's just look at suppressed emotions because you just didn't want to deal with them, or maybe you felt like it made you weak to have those particular emotions, or maybe it just didn't feel good, so you tucked it down, or maybe you never acknowledged that they were there. And so maybe there's a part of your own self that is angry with you for dismissing parts of you that were there and that needed to be addressed. And so, for that, we want to offer some self forgiveness, forgiving you for denying parts of you that you previously did not want to acknowledge. Forgiving you for not exposing all of you to the light of love. Mm. Forgiving you for all of the ways that you've sabotaged yourself. All of the 300 million ways you've done that, right? And extending to yourself grace and receiving love and grace. All right. I want to look at anger connected to times that you've felt victimized. Anger towards the person who you feel was the culprit who caused you to feel the way that you felt or who violated you in some way. Forgiveness isn't something that you're simply doing for them. It's something that you're doing to release you, to free you up. Okay. And sometimes the pathway to the forgiveness is acknowledgement of the anger, acknowledgement of the uncomfortable emotion. All right. All right. So let's look at all of these emotions that might feel afraid of having light shown on them. To help them feel safe to be exposed to the light, to be brought to the light in order to be transformed and transmuted into something else, something more beautiful, more pure, more life affirming. All right, let's look at that fetal trauma from before you were even born, things that you heard while you were yet in the womb and you didn't really know how to process, but that nonetheless impacted your psyche, right? So we want to look at that fetal trauma from things that you heard, things even that you may have taken in into your body. All right, physically. And let's look at birth trauma. All right. Let's reconcile that birth trauma coming into a harsh environment. Most of us were born in a hospital. We had been in this protective womb, this safe space that we were outgrowing. It was time for us to go beyond that space. I've heard it said that uh, a sailboat can remain completely safe and harbor, but that's not what a sailboat was designed for. It wasn't designed to stay in the harbor. It was designed to get out on the sea. And as a fetus, you came to a point where you had outgrown that safe space, and you entered into a safe space that didn't feel as safe. In fact, it felt like a lot of danger, perhaps. And really, at the end of the day, I believe that what life is about outside of the womb and before returning home is about figuring out that this space that seems so hectic, that seems so chaotic, that seems so dangerous, that somehow there's safety in it beyond what things look like and what things appear like. So, feeling born into a hostile environment, there are these bright lights around, there's chaos, there's confusion as you're passing through that portal that's called the birth canal. I didn't actually have the experience of passing through a birth canal, I was cut out. All right. So that may be a form of fetal trauma. You know, maybe you're stuck in the birth canal. Maybe you were cut out. And that may end up resulting in you feeling cut out in some other areas in your life. You heard the wailing and the crying of your mother as you passed through the birth canal, knowing that these screams of pain and maybe feeling a sense of guilt or shame for the pain that you caused her just by being born. Mm. We purify that through the power of God's love filled with grace, and forgive ourselves for the pain that we caused our mothers just by being born. And we release from ourselves the need to punish ourselves for doing that. On some level, though we may not acknowledge it, you might be thinking, well, payback is fair play. You're bringing me into this hostile place. It's okay for you to go through this pain as a result of doing that. We offer forgiveness towards our mothers, towards our fathers, towards ourselves. And towards God. All right, the God issue doesn't seem like so much of an issue as it relates to this right now. All right. Okay. Well, I look at actually even the experience of being spanked on the backside after being born. It wasn't bad enough that you came into this, you came from place of infinite peace and joy and love and to this place called the earth. And even for a while were sheltered from certain things in the earth. When you came to be born, just all of a sudden, there are these bright lights everywhere. You hear there's this screaming, there's the agony and pain that your mother's going through. Somebody pulls you out, you're crying, they slap you, you get a spanking just for being born. That's how we're introduced into this world. We're on punishment. We're punished just for being born, right? So let's forgive the doctor or whoever it was that was there facilitating our birth process, the doctor, the midwife, whoever that person was, right? They were traumatized too. The same thing happened to them. Not that it makes it okay for you, but maybe to hopefully bring some level of understanding and acceptance. All right. Now, biggest thing that I want to look at is anger towards yourself for all of the ways that you sold yourself short. The way that you sold yourself short and compromised who you are at your core. All of the subtle and not so subtle ways that you abandoned yourself, even that you abandoned your own inner child. Deep, deep, deep forgiveness for that. Deep forgiveness for that. All right. So we'll go ahead and close this out. God, thank you so much for a love that defies our comprehension, but really defines the essence of who and what you are. Thank you for the healing that's taken place today, for the things that were uprooted that needed to be uprooted. today for the transmutation of those lower frequencies into that which is higher and purer and better. Thank you for all of the ways that you are continually looking to bestow blessings upon us that serve our highest and best good and the highest and best good of everyone involved. Even though we might not see it sometimes, we give great thanks for all of these blessings. And for everyone who's experienced some healing today, thank you, thank you, thank you. Affirm again, it is done, it is done, it is done. And Hashem Yeshua HaMashiach Ashe and Amen. All right, beloved, that wraps us up for today. If you found some value in what we're offering today, you know, you can feel free if you want to sow into what it is that we're doing here. There's a lot that we sow. Sometimes we sow stuff that results in stuff that doesn't benefit us too well. Sometimes we sow into things that do. You know, if you feel like you've gotten some benefit from this and you want to sow into what it is that we're doing with these Sunday Hope and Healing sessions, you can feel free to do so via Cash App at $ Royce F. Thomason. We certainly welcome that and trust that you will be continually blessed for doing so. If you are interested in learning to do what it is that we're doing with this work of transcending the matrix, actually, I think there's another place I can bring that up. Let me see. Here we are. Nope, that wasn't it. That was the same thing that I already had going up. Here we are. If you want to be able to do this work that we're doing of transcending the matrix, I really truly believe that it's a true blessing to be able to help people experience what's referred to as medical miracles, right? I can't tell you how many people I've seen become free of different diseases, free of pain, free of all kinds of different stuff over the last, more than 2 decades. And it's a tremendous blessing. And what's a huge blessing to me is to see other people, that take through this training be able to have that experience themselves of helping a person to experience something that is utterly life-changing for the good. People's whole situations being turned around in different areas. I believe that ultimately this work is about inner work that we're doing on ourselves, and other people get to benefit from it. Other people get to benefit from it. Every time a healing is done, somebody might have been experiencing pain for 20 years, and within a matter of moments, the pain is gone. That is a huge blessing to the person who's been experiencing the pain. But an even bigger blessing is the person who participated in facilitating the healing. Because in the process of that, the matrix of illusion was to some degree removed from our own eyes, and we become empowered in a new way. We become closer to God in a new and a beautiful and a powerful and profound way. Again, if this is something that you're interested in, reach out to me on Facebook at Royce Fletcher Thomason, or on Instagram at Royce Fletcher Thomason, or even Instagram at Transcending the Matrix. And feel free, if you're not already subscribed to us on YouTube, check us out at Matrix Healing. Just one word, Matrix Healing, on YouTube. And we want to get this message of hope out, this message of healing out. Not just get the message of healing out, we want to share the healing. There's so many people doing so many jacked up things that end up resulting in your pain, other people's pain, because there's brokenness in people. People operate frequently out of a state of brokenness that ends up resulting in problems for you. and problems, quite frankly, for me too, right? The more healing we can get to happen in the world, the less pain people are spreading and passing along, the less toxicity is being delivered into our lives and the lives of the people that we love and that we care about. At any rate, I'm all about us coming together in a spirit of love and operating from a state of wholeness, because the more whole we are, the more blessing we are in our own lives, the more of a blessing we are to the people we care about. When we're healed, other people get healed along with us. When we're broken, we contribute to the brokenness of others. But again, the more we're healed, the more healed and whole we are, the more goodness and love and wholeness we sow into the lives of other people. That's my story. And guess what, baby? I'm sticking to it. I'm Royce Fletcher Thomason. As always, happy to serve. God bless you. And I send you forth with peace and love.